Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to extend the Windows 11 File Explorer and Desktop context menu. It's a little different from how it was before, but I promise it's not too hard, and by the end of this you're going to be able to do it too. Full disclaimer, although I do work for Microsoft, I am not a day-to-day developer. I'm a product manager, and I used to write code when I was in college, but I don't write code on a day-to-day basis, and this is simple enough that I can do it, and I'm going to show you how to also do it. So what we're looking at here on the screen is the GitHub page for the official sample that is linked from a blog post talking about the new context menu that describes not only how to extend the context menu, but how to do a bunch of other things with the technology that's used by the context menu, such as extending the Windows sharing dialog. And this is a pretty heavyweight application, but there's a lot of good resources here, and we might refer back here from time to time. But I've taken that code and really simplified it to just the context menu and to a very simple version of the context menu because I think that this is a better way for people that are interested in extending the context menu themselves as a hobby project to get started. And if we go ahead and look at the code, I've just cloned my GitHub repository. There are a few files that are interesting to look at to understand what's going on. So let's first go ahead and open up this file called apexmanifest.xml. And this is what defines the registration of the context menu verb. The verb is just the command. That's just the lingo that's used to describe the command in the menu. And this is how this works now that we're not using the registry anymore. This is a much more modern system that uses a modern database for telling the system about, in this case, what extends the Windows shell. You can see that there's this section that says Windows File Explorer context menus, and that we are adding a verb that applies to all files, you can tell with star, and that here is the GUID that is assigned to our verb. And here's the DLL that is going to be associated with. Every verb needs to have a different GUID, so if you're going to make multiple, they're going to need different GUIDs. But for now, we're just going to start with this one simple example. This file here, dllmain.cpp, under context menu implementation, is what actually implements the context menu, and it tells the system what icon to show, what text should be displayed, and what the verb should do when you click on it. So you can see there's a method here, get title, get icon, and invoke. And then here in startup.cs, this is where the context menu is registered with the system. This is what actually does the piece that takes the package that we're going to create from that Apex manifest and register it with the system so that Explorer knows that there is a verb that it should show when you right-click a file. So now that you have seen the basics for the pieces of code or the configuration files that we have in our project, let's do some housekeeping first. So the code that we're deploying has to be signed, and we aren't deploying to the store, so we need to create a self-signing certificate. And this is something that I think trips up some people because when you just extended the context menu by putting something into the registry, this wasn't a step that was needed, and it seems more complicated than it actually is, so I'm going to walk you through it step by step. If you go back here to the official sample, there are steps here under building and running the sample, and one of them is create an app package signing certificate. So let's go ahead and click on that. And let's go to the most modern version of this. And you'll see that it gives you a command here to create a new self-signed certificate. So let's go ahead and copy that. I'm going to open up Notepad. And by the way, I'm doing all of this in a fresh virtual machine, just to show that I don't have my PC configured in any sort of special way. Visual Studio is smart enough to know that when you open up the solution file that it should go fetch anything that you don't currently have in your system, such as the Windows 11 SDK. And let's go ahead and take a look at this command that we just copied over from learn.microsoft.com. So we have this PowerShell command, new self-signed certificate, and here's the first thing that we're going to need to change. So this here, this string, needs to match what we have in our Apex manifest under publisher, because we need the publisher to match who is signing the cert. And so let's go ahead and just change this from this longer string just to Contoso. That should be all that we need to do. We'll give it a friendly name like self-signed cert, and that should be all that we need to do. So this is a PowerShell command. So let's actually go ahead and open up the folder where I've put all of my code and where we'll have as a little workspace, and I've just put it in C:/src just because it keeps the path nice and short. Let's go ahead and open a terminal window which opens up PowerShell by default, and we are going to paste this command in and hit enter, and there we go. And this gives us a thumbprint which we are just going to copy. So now that we have our thumbprint, let's go back over to the documentation that will tell us how to export that to a PFX file. So we are going to export the certificate. We're going to use a password. We're going to copy this command. We're going to go back to Notepad and construct our command here. So this thumbprint that we copied before, we are going to put here. We're going to enter in the file path that we want to make for our PFX. So we're going to do c source my pfx.pfx. We're going to create a super secure password, and then we are just going to paste these into the PowerShell window that we opened before. Great. So now let's just set that environment variable. I'm going to copy this, paste that in, and now we have a PFX file in our folder here. So we have our signing certificate. Next, we need to make an app package based on that Apex manifest that we saw before, and then we're going to sign that app package. Okay. So if we go back over here into the app model samples, we just go to the next step, which talks about the app packager, and this talks about make Apex. And if you really want to read through this, you can, but I'm just going to actually copy a prepared command that you can also copy. I'll have it on my GitHub, so just hold on momentarily while I get that ready for you. Okay, so quick cut. Over here we are in the folder that has the apexmanifest.xml. So we'll just select that folder, Control-Shift-C to copy path, and I'm going to put that in here. There we go. And what this is going to do is it's going to make an Apex from that folder. It's going to put it in c::source mypackage.m6, and then we are ready to go. So let's go back into our terminal window and let's open up a new command prompt. And make that m6. And we should... There it is. I'm going to go ahead and turn on file name extensions, which also reminds me, speaking of configurations that are needed for developers, let's go ahead and turn on developer mode. We're also going to need to do that here, so let's turn on developer mode, yes. And now that we have our PFX file and our M6 file, we just need to sign this package, which is also pretty simple. I'm going to go ahead and, just like I did with the make Apex, I'm going to prepare another command, and that command will also be on my GitHub for you to reference. So just like before, we have a command here that is in the, it's actually in the Windows SDK. We are going to use signtool.exe to sign mypackage.m6, Using mypfx.pfx, we're going to use SHA-256, and we are going to put in our super secure password. Let's go back to our terminal window, and in the command prompt tab, we're going to go ahead and paste that in. Just double check it. And that's it, we're signed. So the last thing that we have to do here is, although this is signed, we have to make sure that the signature that we signed it with is accepted by the system. And to do that, we're going to go to the properties of the M6 file, over to digital signatures, look at our signature list and go to details for the one that we've got there, and we can see that we need to get this into a trusted state. So if we go ahead and click View Certificate, it says it's not trusted. We need to install it. We're going to install it to the local machine, and we are going to change where this is stored. So make sure to click Place All Certificates in the following store, Browse, and we are going to say that this is a trusted person by putting it in the Trusted People section. Click Finish, and so now we are all ready to go. Okay, let's go ahead and copy my package.m6. And this is just because the way that I've written this code, it's expecting things to be in the same folder. So I've got this folder where my context menu console app.exe is, which we will run to do the registration. We are going to paste in my package.m6. We are going to go over to context menu implementation and grab that DLL because it's also expecting that to be here. And then finally, we also are going to grab an icon to use because our code is looking for an icon called notepad.ico because this context menu extension is going to be an example of creating one that lets you open up any file in Notepad. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and paste in an icon here. I copied that from another location. You can use whatever icon you think looks and works best for you. And now we should be ready to do the last step, which is to register, and then we'll restart Explorer and it should work, fingers crossed. So let's go ahead and open up a command prompt here just to make sure that if there's any errors, we're going to be able to read them. And let's run our context menu console app.exe. And we need to go grab .NET Core, so no big deal. As I mentioned, I set this up on a clean virtual machine, so that's why some of this stuff isn't there already. Let's go ahead and run that again, and now it should work. Package registration succeeded. Great. So now if we restart Explorer, I'm going to go ahead and go to Task Manager. And I'm going to right-click Windows Explorer and click Restart. And I go ahead and open up File Explorer. Let's just go into our Downloads folder and right-click anything. So for example, let's right-click this exe file, and we should get an edit in Notepad. So now we can open up any file in our system in Notepad using this example. Not too hard, right? At least in terms of the signing and registration piece, it's a little bit different from before using the registry, but I mean, now that you know how to do it, it's not too tricky. And it makes sense, right? You have to sign your code in the modern era, and so we've just created a self-signing certificate and signed our code, and now it's allowed to run. So now we've got a verb called edit in Notepad, and that's already useful. But let's say we wanted to have it do something more. One of the benefits of the iExplorer command way of extending the context menu is you have a lot of power and flexibility to choose what the context menu verb does. And so let's just, for a toy example, change it to display the day of the week instead of edit in Notepad, just to show how we can implement dynamic behavior. And so I've already gone ahead and changed it to add this block of code that's going to display the day of the week instead of edit in Notepad. And I already did the perfunctory steps of building and deploying, so let's just go ahead and right-click something. And as you can see, because it's Thursday, this is now displaying Thursday. And so you could take that principle and apply it to any part of this that you want. And if you look in the official sample code and the sparse packages sample code, it has a lot of examples of how to do things like creating cascading context menus, creating context menus that have statefulness, such as checkboxes and radio buttons, verbs that can have disabled states. So really the sky's the limit in terms of what you can do, but I'm just trying to show a simple example because I think that's what will apply for a lot of use cases. So go ahead and give that a shot and let me know in the comments if you have any questions or what you'd like to see next.